Hey, entrepreneurs, executives, and spammers. We started the Pilot House email and customer retention team to crush targets. And in our 4th year, we are the best customer retention team in the Roman character set. We use campaigns to fire up the addresses you spent so much money to acquire and build effective automations that keep your engagement window fat and drive value that you can amortize over years. The cheapest customer is the customer you already have, and the most effective ad funnels go to high-intent audience. Come to pilothouse.co, fill out the lead form, and ask to speak with me directly. I'll give you a free audit. Back to the show.
In the inbox late night, glowing screen, see the light. Email, everything feels alright.
Today is going to be an interesting talk. We're going to discuss what's a click, what's an open, what's a purchase. How does a click work? What are the implications for revenue attribution? This is important. This is one of the biggest misconceptions I've seen, in the email world. When you understand this, you're able to step into a technical situation like, I'm an email sender, understand what's happening, and figure and troubleshoot and compare pieces of data, understand which data is correct and which is not correct. This is a very important part of you upping your game. It's obviously understanding how the internet works. It's the world's best email retention podcast, and I'm your host, Jordan Gordon. We are a member of the DTC network of podcasts and the philosophical home of the Pilot House email and customer retention team. If you want to make low-cost revenue a large part of your digital ecosystem, follow us on your favorite podcast app today. Today is going to be an interesting talk. We're going to discuss what's a click, what's an open, what's a purchase. Basic and silly, right? What's a click? But you know what? What is a click? When you are looking in systems and it says someone clicked, what does that even mean? I mean, we've discussed how there's different worlds of opens, right? And we'll get into that again a bit. But bottom line, a click, an open, and a purchase, they mean different things in different situations in different systems. And when you're really trying to figure out what's going on, it's good to understand what's happening under the hood. And I certainly know that some people can be like, for instance, senior email marketers or senior ads managers, and they don't yet know how the internet works because it's so ubiquitous, right? I mean, people spend, 6 hours a day in social media or some horrible thing like that. I don't, by the way. But they don't know how the internet works. They don't know what's happening there. Yeah, let's dig in and talk about what's a click, what's an open, what's a purchase, so you can understand the technology, you can understand your attribution, and you can troubleshoot problems when you see different systems giving you different numbers. You can understand what's happening behind that, and you can just be enlightened on the functioning of such a foundational part of humanity at this point. Right? I mean, the internet has certainly changed humanity. What's a click? A click is a hyperlink that makes an HTTP call to a web server to serve HTML code. All right? That was technical, but I wanted to just give a decent definition. Now, also, that click could call an FTP server or an SMTP server, but for our purposes, when someone clicks, HTTP : /www whatever, right? So for most cases, it's just a hyperlink, which is a link that calls an HTTP server to serve HTML. And that HTML can have all kinds of stuff in it, like JavaScript, or it's been a long time since I've been a product manager, so I'm not even sure what's necessarily in sites anymore, but I assume there's still some JavaScript in there. And that JavaScript, which is executed by the HTML or by the web browser, that causes all kinds of stuff to happen, like Facebook loads, right? But that event that causes that to load inside of your web client, that starts from, either from an execution on the computer or a hyperlink, a click, right? A click causes all that to happen. Most foundational thing to understand when we think about what's a click, what's an open, what's an order. Broadly speaking, a click is a click, right? So that means there's no attribution. There's no attributing clicks. We attribute revenue. And so you've probably seen, hey, my revenue in Klaviyo versus what's in Shopify versus what's in Google Analytics versus what's in Triple Whale or whatever. they're all so different. They're all entirely different. And there's a reason for that, right? Every attribution model is wrong and some attribution models are useful. But generally, all of those systems should have around the same number of clicks, right? Now, there's a difference between a click and a session. Let's talk about that, right? A click is that call to an HTTP server to load HTML. A session is an event with a duration that is triggered by a click. Let's say you got a half an hour session. A click starts that session, and that session is something calculated by, say, Google Analytics 4, which is still a common tool. It's pretty kneecapped by all the privacy stuff that's happening online, but people still often have Google Analytics 4 running. It's going to say, hey, there was a click. I'm starting a session. And then if there are more clicks from that device, they all fit into that session. And if someone keeps clicking, that session elongates. So you could have like 100 clicks happen inside a session. And then let's say it's a half an hour session. Someone doesn't click for half an hour. Okay, the session ends, right? So clicks will often be, I don't know, something like 2x more than sessions. So if you go and look in your system and you say, hey, I see 100 clicks. Hey, why does it only say 50 sessions? Totally normal, right? Because I'm sure there is something like an average of 2 clicks a session. I'm sure that's, not too far from the truth, right? So a click's a click's a click. When you look at clicks, the clicks should be the same across platforms if you can see clicks. But again, not all platforms show clicks. Some platforms show sessions. So understand that they're rolled up there, right? Okay, well, what about a unique click? What's a unique click? Let's say this is the world's best email retention podcast, so let's use email as an example, right? Okay, I click, on the hero shot and I go look at, let's say I land on a product because it's a product feature. I go, you know what? I'm not really into that product. I click back and I scroll down. Oh, there's another product I like. It's a secondary product that's featured in the email. Click on that, land on that product page. Okay, that's 2 clicks, but from the same device and from the same marketing asset. And there is a piece of code. Klaviyo has a piece of JS running on the site, and it's watching all the links. It's reading all the links, right? Saying, hey, this is a Klaviyo link. I know that. I know these links. I see this in the session. This is mine. It says, oh, this is for this email because it's got some code. So it knows it's so it knows when there's multiple clicks from the same email that are loaded on the page. So it rolls it up. So if you do, just like a session, if you do 10 clicks in the same email, it's going to be 1 unique click. And so unique clicks that you see in the email platform, I treat those similarly to sessions. I expect the unique clicks in Klaviyo to be similar to the sessions in an MTA, a multi-touch attribution platform like Google Analytics or Triple Whale or something like that. So there we go. Clicks, unique clicks, and sessions. Appended to the link that we click on are parameters like UTM codes. Something that says, hey, this is the UTM. This is a Google Analytics example, although many systems consume UTMs. And there are lots of parameters, of course, that aren't UTMs. But for instance, UTM campaign is, summer launch. UTM medium is email. Okay, this is an email, summer launch. Google Analytics also has code on the site that reads every hyperlink, every HTTP call, right, to load HTML, and goes, oh, this got some UTMs in it. This click is a marketing click, and it takes that information, sends it to a Google Analytics server, and starts categorizes that click under the kind of traffic that it is. And Klaviyo also consumes those UTMs. It's reading, goes, oh, it's a UTM, right? And that is a link parameter, right? It goes after the question mark. You've got your link, and then you got a question mark, and then all your key value pairs go there. All right. Clicks have UTMs. Unique clicks, sessions have UTMs, right? But you could load multiple different UTMs in a single session. The parameters are on the link, are on the click. So understand what those UTMs are, right? Those UTMs are a way to categorize the traffic that you're sending to a site. So these HTTP calls, first of all, they can fail. You can obviously have, they can fail in that they fail to load anything because you're calling something that's not there, like it's a bad link. They can fail because for some reason the server fails. So even though there was something there, nothing happens. It just spins for a while. All kinds of things can go wrong. So understand that you can have clicks where it works but doesn't get tracked for some reason because the tracking thing didn't work. So this information is inherently lossy, right? And so lossy that I encourage you to go and look at your UTMs, your UTM counts, session counts on Google Analytics or whatever your MTA is, and go look at Shopify. I've found Shopify to be incredibly lossy. So it is not recording, all of this stuff. Understand that unique click session, this information is lossy. The most amazing thing about the internet is that it works at all, right? So when it comes to Klaviyo, we consider clicks, of course, right? And unique clicks. And then we think about something called a visit. It's just a conceptual within our team, right? It's just a conceptual thing. If we see an active on site, a viewed product, a checkout started, we don't really do added to cart because most added to carts had a viewed product happen before them, whatever, right? But active on site, viewed product, or checkout started, if we see one of those, we consider that a visit because you had to be on the site to do it. So of course you can have visits without clicks. How could that happen? For whatever reason, the click data doesn't record. I just said it's lossy, right? I mean, something goes in the session and the session fails for whatever reason. But also someone can just open an email, go, oh, that's awesome. Put their phone down and go and type the domain into their web browser and just make a purchase on their computer because it's easier to make a purchase on your computer than your phone. So very often you will see a visit without a click. You can have a checkout started that doesn't have a click before it, of course. Now, sorry, this might be a little back and forth. I've just got my list here and I'm kind of jumping all over the place a little bit, but I've got a list of stuff to go through. So you've got your unique clicks and your clicks. You've got your unique click rate and your click rate. Click rate can be pretty wild because of bot clicks. We haven't gotten to bot clicks. Might as well just discuss bot clicks. So many systems out there will pre-click links to see what's happening on the other side, right? And it's security stuff. Hey, what is this? Is it safe for me to send this to my users, right? When I click on this link, where does the HTML, where's the hyperlink call to? Like, a server in Russia, right? But it says it's in Wyoming. So bot clicks have always been there. They were a big thing in 2024. And my guess is, it's just becoming a bit less of a friendly world. So, there were just, I think, probably a bunch of corporations that were just loading a bunch of this software. I went in and looked row by row where the bot clicks were coming from in the data, and I forget the name of the software, but you can go back on the World's Best Email Retention podcast and you can find it, or reach out if you want me to dig it up for you again, if you're a professional who really wants to know. But there were some products that were doing all these bot clicks, and we would just see like the click rate double, right, on some things because there were so many bot clicks. Look at bottom line, the click-through rate is dirtier than the unique click rate. I mean, not only does the unique click rate, if someone clicks and clicks back and clicks again, consider that one click. But if you have, let's say you have 100 clicks happen on that link because of some automated event, it's all going to get rolled up into the unique click rate. That's why the unique click rate is used very often. It's just a cleaner metric. You can see crazy things happen with the click-through rate. You want to confirm on the unique click rate. And equally, I don't always target revenue, because we're going to discuss when we get there, revenue's a mess, right? Only like Shopify net revenue is really the money you made. Everything else is just out to lunch. So sometimes I will want to just, hey, say what we want is traffic. What's email supposed to be doing, really? It's supposed to be getting people on the site so they can purchase. So how's traffic growing? And I'll use the unique clicks, right? Even if I'm looking, like sometimes I'm making a comparison to, say, something I pull out of SEMrush, and the SEMrush is providing organic clicks. You should be comparing Klaviyo clicks to organic clicks, but I'll often use the unique click and just understand that, it's maybe a third less or something like that. Just because, it's less likely to be dirty, and you just account for the fact that it's unique. What about, a little bit, let's pull on that attribution thread a little bit more on attribution. So Klaviyo default attribution, we will get to this more when we get to what's in order, but Klaviyo default attribution is if they've opened in 5 days or clicked in 1 day. And what people often do on other platforms is do like a 7-day click. What's right, what's wrong? Every attribution model is wrong and some are useful. So a 7-day click, of course, means one of these clicks was registered by the Klaviyo code that's in the site. And then Klaviyo sees from that user, because that click is recorded back to the user, Klaviyo sees a purchase that happens within 7 days for that user, records that revenue, it attributes that revenue. The default attribution is Klaviyo sees an open, and recall, Apple privacy opens, for sure, like half of the opens you record are not real opens, but Klaviyo sees an open, even an Apple privacy open that wasn't an open, and sees a purchase within 5 days, or sees a click and has a purchase the same day from that click, it records that as revenue, as platform revenue, which basically means, look, it doesn't take into account what's happening with ads or whatever. It says this was 100% me. Again, even if someone didn't even open the email, right? It was just an Apple privacy open. It was a fake open. I didn't even interact with email. Klaviyo says that was 100% me. And every platform is like this. Every platform revenue is super, super elevated. And you have to just understand that. So, why would you do 7-day click and not just 1-day click? Well, 7-day click is so common to use among, marketers and in the industry that it's just a nice apples to apples, right? Hey, they got on the site. Well, we got them on the site. We did our job, right? And then, and as part of that whole experience, they ended up making a purchase. Yeah, did some other channels interact with it? Sure. After us? Sure, maybe, but we did our job. So we're gonna call that revenue. Why would you use one and not the other? Well, 7-day click is we talk about email being CRO and being brand reinforcement. The 7-day click is very CRO, right? We got someone on the site, they made a purchase. And the open-based attribution really plays into the brand reinforcement kind of revenue. I've said this before, where the real money is made in email is in keeping someone involved with your brand for 3 years, right? And being there when they make their next purchase. Because stuff that's just in the funnel, sure, like they get a checkout abandon. Checkout abandons are huge. I'm not saying they're bad. They're amazing. The people end up back on the site and they purchase. Awesome, right? But you also spent on Facebook and Google to get them on the site. And so, you can only attribute a portion of that in your mind to email. Email didn't do that. Email helped. Email got an assist, but there's so much going on there. Now, and that's just that first purchase. So all of those channels have to share that first purchase. Let's say someone stays on your list for 3 years and makes 3 more purchases, right? Sure, they might end up back in an ads funnel, but it's the free impressions from email that got them back in that ads funnel. Once they're out of your ads, you're either spending again full price to get them back in, reinforce the awareness, educate them about what you've recently launched and your updates in your business, and get them to purchase again at full pop. Costs the same. Maybe it's cheaper on future because they were aware before, but you're paying ad prices, right? And if all the cookies have been expelled, and you don't know, you can't track that, you can't target them anymore specifically. You have to target broad and hope you get them again. Some brands, and this is something you can do, is you take your buyer list and you exclude that buyer list from Facebook and from Google, right? And you say, we're not going to spend to reactivate the same user. Google and Meta often know what your email address is because you're signed in. Not always, so you can't completely exclude it, but some brands say like, look, we're going to minimize spending to get someone to repeat, and we're going to just focus on email and let email do it. And that's cost effective. It's not actually it's not what I recommend for various reasons. Out of scope from this discussion, but you can go back on previous episodes and I break that down. Anyway, you can, they can end up back in a funnel, but either if you allow it, they can end up back in a funnel, but either they ended up in there randomly, which means you're paying from the very top, or you kept them on your list for 3 years and they were made aware and they clicked through the email and bought right from the email and there was no ads involved, or they ended up back in an ads funnel as part of this overall awareness. Point is, that's email, right? That's the power of email, is the free brand impressions for 2-3 years, making a space in their mind for you, and they recall your brand and seek you out on their own without having to spend big money. And the open-based attribution, the default attribution, lends itself to that and reports on that. So what I'll say is if you leave the default attribution and go to 7-day click, one, the revenue attributed will be lower. That'll just happen because there's more opens than clicks, of course, right? Your program will optimize itself towards the CRO part of email and not the part where, hey, they're on your list, they're opening, they're kind of interacting, and then they just make another purchase. They walk into the store and you've got Shopify linked up with your POS. Only email is going to attribute. Only the default open end click-based attribution will attribute that. What's an open? We just discussed what a click was and kind of got into it. How does a click work? What are the implications for revenue attribution? What's an open? An open is an in-application execution to view the contents of an SMTP message, a simple message transfer protocol or email message. That's interesting. It's an in-application execution to view the contents, and the contents are usually HTML. Like, let's just assume the contents of email are HTML. Even if you have a full design email and it's just an image, that's an image hosted by HTML. So the open itself is not a click. I mean, that seems obvious, but the open itself is not a call to an HTTP server to feed it to call HTML. The open happens only in the application. Now, there are HTTP calls that happen if there is an image in the email. The HTML will call that image and the client will load it, right? But email, the protocol as it works, an email can actually just be ASCII text. It can technically have no HTML. Everything we deal with has HTML in it, but it can have no HTML and make no call, and nothing is transferred. All you're doing is just looking at the contents from the open. So what's actually happening when we open, though, is there is an open pixel. And we've discussed this on Apple Privacy Opens. I'm sure we will again in a second. But when the HTML is loaded, there's a little itty-bitty image. Even if there's no images in the email, there's a little itty-bitty image. And it's actually a link. It's a link to load that image, right? 1 pixel by 1 pixel. And we discussed how, a click, which is an HTTP call, well, you get another HTTP call that goes to that server and pulls over that image. The functionality inside of the HTML is very simple compared to obviously like social media platforms. HTML doesn't load video, right? You can't execute a whole bunch of stuff. Apple, I've gotten video to run in an email with Apple before, but the thing is that the performance is so bad because it's the simple message transfer protocol, SMTP email. It's for simple messages. So ultimately, it doesn't really work. That functionality does technically exist, but in effect, you can't do very many complicated things in email at all. You can't run code in effect, but you can load an image, right? It's an HTML page, like, remember the first HTML page you made when you were young? If you're old like me, that's the kind of HTML it is. Why is it so simple, by the way? Just a bit of an aside. Interoperability, right? The internet is, you can do crazy stuff with Facebook. It's a walled garden, right? With Instagram, it's a walled garden. You're inside of an application. But the internet was made so that everything would just fit together, nicely and quickly. And so it was actually network effects. It's the bottom layer of the internet, right? SMTP, HTTP, FTP, all these kinds of TCP/IP, right? Interoperability and network effect was what was important. And that's actually why the internet was successful. It would not be there if it was designed with the crazy level of functionality that you get out of your social media apps. Yeah. So a little bit more on opens, right? So we know that when you open, the application it's just going to show you the contents of the email, which were already there. The contents of the email were transferred into your inbox by another function, a bunch of HTTP calls, right, to load those contents. But you're just loading the contents that are already there, right? So you're not making any calls, except, if there's images, like the open pixel. So then there's this thing called read rates, and probably very few of you use these, but they are pretty cool. I've used read rates from Litmus. And what it does, I'm actually not entirely sure what's happening on the technology. I think they probably have, they leave sessions open. So a session can have an expiry date, the session in your browser, an expiry time, and it's often like instantaneous. But I think they leave sessions open, and so they're able to track when that session gets closed. Bottom line, they can track how long someone was in your email. Right? Did they open it and click back right away? Did they look at it for 20 seconds? They track that and categorize read rates. And a read is 8 seconds in Litmus. What's really cool about that is, okay, you've got received, someone received an email, and you've got opened, they opened an email, and then you've got click, they clicked an email, but there's actually something in between. Did they read it? Did they spend 8 or more seconds in that email? That's also a really powerful metric because we know open rates are so screwed up. So, I'm sure if you are crafty, you can find a way to, Litmus categorizes opens as reliable or Apple privacy. There's Apple privacy open, which you don't know if it's truly an open, but reliable opens, it's certainly an open. Because they know, everybody knows, every system can detect if it's Apple privacy or not. So you can use that read rate in there to get a real understanding of what's actually happening and apply that to your whole program to better calculate how many actual opens you're getting. Because you could use that to say, oh, well, all my Apple privacies, this is probably how many reads I'm getting out of those because people interact with email in the same way. And you can get better quality understanding of what's happening with your channel if you use read rates. I'll really quickly explain Apple privacy again, very quickly. I've explained this so many times in the pod, but for anybody who's listening, every time someone opens up a new iPhone, it asks, do you want to protect your identity? 90% of people say yes. 10% of people, for some reason, don't want to protect their identity. And those people, when an email is opened in an email application, the tracking pixel that we discussed is cached on an Apple server. They do that to protect for a number of reasons. One, to protect your location, so you can't be geolocated with the loading of that, with the pixel, with the call, because all along the line, during that call happens, you go through routers and IP addresses are attached, which have locations. Also, just to protect knowing whether or not you're interacting with messages. So, okay, we're not going to necessarily let people know that you're just, whether or not you are interacting with the messages. Since that pixel's cached, every time the image is transferred, or every time an email is transferred, what happens is that pixel is automatically loaded whether or not the email is opened, because you don't have to open it to call it, right? The only time that doesn't happen is when it goes to spam. If you go to your Gmail spam, you'll notice that there's no images in there. The image URL isn't even put in the email. I think it's that the image URL is not put in the email. You don't quote me on that. But basically, the image is not called at all, even when you go in and look in your spam, because there's no images. And that is when you see your open rate go down to like 20%, because there's no tracking pixel image to automatically call. Okay, that's an Apple privacy, and that's why good open rates used to be 20 to 30%, and now they're 40 to 60%, right? And they cause all kinds of problems, like we just discussed with attribution. If someone doesn't even open the email, but you've got open attribution on, it'll attribute the revenue, even though they didn't really open the email, right? Also, just like click attribution can fail, open attribution can fail. People can open the email and then click back, before the load that has to happens, before the call that's going to load the image happens. And so then the platform, Klaviyo or whatever, doesn't get to record the open. And therefore you can have clicks with no opens. And so this is something I always do, even though it doesn't seem like it should work. It doesn't seem like you should need to do this, but you do. You can't just segment on the open, even if it's a reliable open. If you pull the Apple privacy, you can't segment just on the open and not segment on clicks, because you think, oh, well, you can't have a click without an open. Yes, you can have a click without an open. There are many clicks with no opens because the open isn't recorded properly. All of this information is lossy. Everything I've described to you. Think how crazy it is that this stuff even works. It's all lossy information. So you have to include opens or clicks to make sure you get all of the interactions, because you can have clicks without opens. I put a note in here to actually, when we got this far through, I put a note in for anybody who's actually still in this pod. This is pretty deep. I put a note in here. Okay, at this point, explain how the internet actually works. So we discussed how those calls work, how you make a call from your machine to a server to transfer HTML. Well, let's take a quick second, as long as we got this far, to explain briefly what happens to get that HTML onto your client, from the server onto the client. In between your computer and the server are a bunch of internet routers. And the internet routers, we say like, hey, my router in my house. Oh, it's a router. It's like, it is technically a router, but like internet routers are something different. They are servers, and what they do is keep track of the most likely other router to send something to reach another router. These are routing tables, and routing tables are dynamically produced. In school, I made static routing tables so long ago. So these are they're just routers have computers running in their routing area, right? And so a router knows, hey, if you want to reach this computer over here with this IP address, the most likely next router to send it to is this one. And this router knows, oh, to get to this IP over there, the next most likely router to send it to is this one. And so you can just get this chain of routers that packets are transferred through to get something to its destination. And so importantly, no one router knows exactly where something else is in the internet. It just knows the best place to send it to find someone else who knows. It's like a game of telephone, right? What technically happens, I'll water this down because it is kind of funny. Your computer, it doesn't know, there's no path to the router. Actually, when we get down to like the fiber optic cable or the waves, if you're using like Wi-Fi or whatever, it's not like the computer's like, oh, there's my router, and it talks to its router. It's actually waves. Ultimately, it's waves passing through of light or microwave or whatever. And so all you can do is shout in all directions. So your computer shouts in all directions to the next nearest router, which is probably your internet router. It shouts, hey, I want this from this guy with this IP address, which is like way over there and somewhere else in the country or somewhere else in the world. And the router goes, oh, this guy, it's probably over there. And so it shouts. All it can do is shout to all the routers and all the computers around it, hey, I'm looking for this IP. right? And most people, they read it and most machines ignore it. I'm like, well, that's not me and I don't know where it's going, and they ignore it. But point being, everybody hears that shout. Everybody hears, hey, I'm looking for this guy, to your local, to your LAN, your local area network. But one of them is that router. And he goes, oh, hey, it's not for me, but I know where it might be. I think this guy. And then it shouts to every computer that in its area, hey, I'm looking for this guy. And the next router goes, hey, I don't know where that is, but I know who might know. And it just gets shouted. And the interesting thing is every single packet for every single machine is processed and examined by every other machine in that local area network when you make that shout. And it's a protocol even below TCP/IP. I forget what the protocol is called. And finally, it gets to the shout, right? Gets to the local router, and that local router shouts, hey, this is for this computer with the IP. And that computer goes, oh, that's me. Yeah. And it processes it. And it's like, oh, hey, this is a call for this image. And then it takes that image. The image is probably too big to fit in a packet, and it splits it up into like tens, hundreds, thousands of different packets. Packets are just small enough that they can be transferred, in wavelength in a short period of time, which makes room for lots of different packets to go. It's like putting people in multiple cars rather than having one bus, and then you can take different routes, right? Because packets don't always follow the same route. Sometimes a router along that way will go, yeah, but I'm not working. And, so then you'll try somewhere else to find a route. Chops it up and then sends it back. And let's say it gets chopped into 100 pieces. I don't know how many packets there are in an image. Gets chopped into 100 pieces. That shout that we discussed happens the entire way back 100 times. So think about how fast this is happening when you load your image. It's crazy, right? And every single time, every single shout is processed by every single machine along the way to figure out if that packet's for it. It's insane. I can't believe it even works. And then finally it gets back to the machine, puts all the packets together, loads them. And the interesting thing is, so when you were doing TV, like broadcast TV, the old days before the internet, each cable had to be devoted to, that channel, whether or not there was information being passed, right? Because it was just only, I take the wavelength, analog, turn it into video. With these packets, because you can split it up, things can take different paths, and multiple people can use the same, say, fiber optic cable, for instance, or wavelength. People can use the same wavelength because you can split it up into packets. So that's a big cost saving revolution from the internet. Okay, that was kind of interesting, right? I mean, this is my chance for those of you out there who don't know how the internet works, but you deal with clicks and opens and purchases every day. This is a chance to just explain to you what's happening, which is when you understand this, you're able to step into a technical situation like, oh, I'm at an email sender, understand what's happening and figure and troubleshoot and compare pieces of data, understand which data is correct and which is not correct. This is a very important part of you upping your game. It's obviously understanding how the internet works. If you work on the internet, right? I mean, if you want to be a mechanic, is it important to understand how a car works? Yes. If you want to be a driver, is it important to understand how a car works? Yes. So if you want to be a top internet professional, you must understand how the internet works. Okay. So we've actually got, received. Here's the very top. Here's the very top, message sent. And then we didn't discuss it, but then you have bounces. Bounces where it just doesn't get there. I guess let me just take a second. A hard bounce address doesn't exist. So some server says that address doesn't exist. These are the worst. And there's soft bounces, which is often like the mailbox is full or all kinds of things can cause soft bounces. But the point is you could possibly send to that email address in future and have it received. Whereas with a hard bounce, it'll never be received. The address doesn't exist. After that, that's message received, right? Now here's the thing. When you see message received, you don't actually know if it made it into the inbox, right? Message received, which is basically it didn't bounce, just means it got to Gmail or whoever. But it doesn't say what Gmail did with it. So when you see a delivery rate of 99%, This is important. This is one of the biggest misconceptions I've seen, in the email world, right? The most misleading thing in the email world is list size. Just because the list is big doesn't mean it's good. In fact, most of those addresses are garbage. And the most misleading metric is delivery rate, because that doesn't mean that it got into someone's inbox. It just means it didn't bounce. That's all it means. What's Gmail do with it? Well, tons of it just puts in spam. Lots. Gmail's like, you know what? I think this is trash. I'm just dropping it. I'm putting it in spam. I'm just filing it under G. So to get that inbox, you need to use tools. For instance, Glock apps. Go back a few episodes ago and watch our interview with the CEO of Glock apps, Alex, and he breaks down what's going on to figure out inboxing rates. But basically, message received. So sent, bounce. Okay, it got delivered, right? So that's received. And below that, did it get inboxed? You can't measure that through Klaviyo. Did it get inboxed, right? So with message received, the unknown is, did it inbox? And then you've got, okay, did it open, right? Did somebody open it? Did the little pixel get called that we discussed? What is the unknown for open? Is it an Apple privacy open or not, right? So received. Can you trust the received number? No, because you don't know if it inboxed. The open. Can you trust the open number? No, you can't trust the open number because it could be an Apple privacy open, right? The number you can trust fully is sent, right? I tried to get the email there. That's, and you can trust a bounce. A bounce is a real bounce. Yeah, a bounce is a bounce is a bounce. But you can't trust the received because you don't know if it inboxed. You can't trust the open. You don't know if it's an Apple privacy open or not. And you also technically can't trust the click because it could be a bot click. We discussed bot clicks a couple minutes ago, although I didn't mention this, which I should. I find that bot clicks are very cleaned up on Gmail. So I measure Gmail metrics and use those to infer metrics for my other inbox providers, right? Lots of inbox providers do not deal with bot clicks properly, and this makes the click-through rate inherently dirty, right? The click-through rate, just like the open rate is dirty, the click-through rate is dirty. I guarantee you this. We can make this a snippet. We can tell the world about this. When you just look at your inbox, when you just look at your campaigns in Klaviyo or any other sender, the open rate is like totally wrong. The click rate is like totally wrong. The placed order rate is totally wrong, right? Because of all the reasons we've discussed so far in this podcast episode. And understanding what's happening under the hood is going to help you understand those numbers, understand how you should be adjusting them in your mind based on what you're doing with your sender, what you're doing with your email program, and what's currently going on in the webosphere, right? So received, can't trust because you don't know if it inboxed. Open, can't trust, you don't know if it's Apple privacy open. Click, can't trust because you don't know if it was a bot click. And then placed order, can't trust because it's an attributed order. And that brings us right into placed order. What's an order? Let's discuss when someone orders something, what's happening, right? When I see an order in a platform, what's actually happening? So I did marketing in the payments industry, and I have an understanding of what's happening with payments, and payments are crazy. It's like a brutal, bizarre network. There's so much regulation. It's so fragmented. There's so many products. There's so many ways to pay. But let's just say a Shopify order is obviously, some credit card got charged somewhere and Shopify got told the credit card got charged, right? So Shopify's got a cart. Someone puts in the information, and then, it's probably an HTTP call, unless it's not on the internet and it's doing something else. It's probably another one of these HTTP calls, right? So something that, we might call a click, right, happens. And then the card gets charged, Shopify gets notified. Okay, that's a Shopify order. That's like your total revenue. But of course, we all look at net revenue. So what's happening there? Well, look, did the order get fulfilled, right? Because you see fulfilled order inside Shopify. And did the order get canceled? So when you pull out the stuff that didn't get fulfilled, stuff that got canceled, when you pull that out, you get your net revenue. So let's just say that's the best revenue number. Someone could disagree, whatever. There's lots of different reasons to disagree with that, but let's just say the best revenue number is net revenue. Okay? That's real dollars in your pocket. Well, it's real dollars that went into your P&L. And then let's compare that to platform revenue. We just discussed earlier platform revenue, which is the platform recognized a click or an open or an impression. There are no impressions in email, but there are impressions in like Facebook and Instagram and Google. And the closest thing to an impression is like, in truth, as weird it is, the closest thing to impression is an Apple Privacy Open. Because an Apple Privacy Open is a mix of people who opened or who just got the message in their inbox and they didn't open, right? But they had to have received it, right? So even though opens are such a horribly dirty metric, they're in between a real open and an email received. They're kind of in this space between received and opened. And so a great proxy for an impression in the ads world is actually unique opens, including your Apple Privacy Opens. Like just unique opens from Klaviyo is a perfect proxy for impressions because it's in this weird space between received and opened. And so it definitely was in their inbox. They saw it in their inbox. Probably they didn't necessarily see it, but it was in their inbox. And if they scroll through, they see your brand. That's a brand impression. Okay. So the platform recognized a click or an open or an impression, if it was impression-based attribution. And then also someone places an order inside of Shopify. When someone places an order inside of Shopify, those platforms, they all synchronize with Shopify's database constantly. So they say, oh, hey, this email address, I know this email address opened because when that little pixel got called, that pixel was associated with this account, email address account. Or I know they clicked because when that HTTP call happened and there was link parameters, those link parameters were consumed by the Klaviyo pixel, by the Klaviyo code sitting, running in the session. And then that got sent back to me and I go, oh, that parameter is associated with this email address. And oh, look, I see an order from that email address coming from Shopify. It puts it together and goes, okay, I know that person clicked or opened, right? Or in ads had an impression. And I see that they've purchased. So I attribute 100% of that revenue to myself. And the only difference between platform attribution and then we go to, let's just say Triple Whale, right? They will then have attribution logic that says, okay, but you know what? Sure, email says it had, that click and then sees an order, but it aggregates all that information. Says, yeah, but you know what? Gmail also had a click, right, and saw the open. And Facebook also had a click and saw the open, right? And it's not actually aggregating information from those platforms. It has they have their own little code running in the site that goes, oh yeah, I see Meta, I see Google, I see email. So yeah, they all had that happen. And so what it'll do very simply is let's just say the simplest way to think about this is even attribution, where it says, well, I see 3, I'll give them all a third. And they cut that revenue in a third, which is actually why we have to think about how powerful email is on that 3-year relationship we discussed, because on that first purchase where all the channels were active, you have to split that revenue in 3, for instance, or 4. But if you just get someone from a year and a half ago to click on an email and purchase, you got to give 100% of that to that channel because they're out of your ads funnel. And that sharing is one of the reasons that MTA attribution is always so low compared to Klaviyo attribution, right? Or Meta attribution or Google attribution. And one more kind of revenue that I'll discuss. So we said Shopify net revenue is probably the best. It's the most realistic revenue number. It's real revenue. It's not attributed revenue. But Shopify also has, you can go in there and you can look at your Klaviyo orders, your Instagram orders, right? But I'll just say final point on all this. I have found that to be so lossy. For whatever reason, Shopify is not reporting all of that. And My guess is it's last click. So let's round this off. I just said, hey, Triple Whale or whatever takes all of them and says, oh, I see 3 interactions. Okay, I'm going to split it in 3. There's the other way to do it. The other common ways, there are a couple of very common ways. First touch, last touch, and then regression. Regression is I'm going to apply some crazy logic, and it's kind of a black box. Let's just put that aside. Apply some crazy logic, look at consumer behavior on the site over time and say, when I see these kinds of clicks together, it usually means that it was driven by Google. But very easy to understand is first touch and last touch. First touch is, okay, oh, I see all 3 of them were involved. Okay, who was the first one? We want to give that one credit because they brought in the customer. Ultimately, that is even super wrong. Most of the time, there was even another device before that, right? Because people have 2 or 3 devices, and you can't even really track those very well. We actually had someone on the DTC podcast recently that had an MTA software that works around that. But most MTA softwares, there's a problem where, sure, you see the first touch here, but there was another device before that, right? But first touch generally gives more credit to ads, right? I mean, how can you have a first touch on email? They had to get on your email list somehow. And then there's last touch, which is, okay, I see all these were involved. Here's the last one. Well, that's one that closed the business. So first touch, even, where it's shared, and last touch, right? Now, Shopify is probably doing last touch, right? But I think it's lossy as far as I can tell because I've looked at other last touches and Shopify is way underreporting in my mind. And also email is a classic last touch channel, and I see email weak in there. So I will just recommend that when we come to attributing, I would not use the Shopify channel attribution. Get some software, get Google Analytics, which has also got huge problems, get Triple Whale, or use your platform revenues. Take all your platform revenues and put them side by side to get an idea of what's happening. I mean, is it fine to have Shopify channel attribution as part of that mix? Sure, but do not rely on it. I guarantee you it is massively underreporting what's happening with your email and retention channel. And if you rely on that, you're going to way underinvest in email and customer retention. Okay, that was a 1-hour talk about what's a click, what's an open, what's a purchase. Really interesting stuff. So I hope you all can use that to have a better understanding of what you're seeing when you see your platform report on activities. So on that note, hey, entrepreneurs, executives, and spammers, have fun spamming.
In the inbox late night, glowing screen, see the light. Email, everything feels alright.
Hey, entrepreneurs and spammers, remember, you can't scale without email, and the cheapest customer to acquire is the customer you already have. So please subscribe to the world's best email and retention podcast and learn how to make low-cost revenue a big part of your digital ecosystem.